Hi, this is Maddi. Cheers and welcome to the Wisdom Window. I'm here today with my co-host, Marianne Franzese. Say
Hi,
hi, Marianne.
Maddie.
Hi, Mare. And we hope that this will be your portal to timeless knowledge and understanding. That is our true hope with this new podcast. Thank you for joining us for the premiere. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Marianne so she can tell you a little bit about herself and why we decided to do this.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I think it's a great place to start with the question of who are we and why are we doing it? And as I think about that, I feel like I'm going to stay away from the many roles that I've accomplished and acquired because wisdom to me is not so much about the intellectual achievements in life.
Mm-hmm.
It is much more about a kind of inner knowing that, of course, is connected to love and goodness and unity. So, part of the intention is I truly believe, and I know you do too, Maddie, that we are all born with and then acquire this inner wisdom that's very personal based on the experience we encounter in our lifetime.
Right.
So, one of the intentions as we start to connect with some of these great wisdom teachers is to find our own personal voice of wisdom. And in coming up with the name of the show, Wisdom Window, the association for me is when God closes a door, she opens a window.
Window.
And as human beings, one of the things we all share is that we suffer. And in our suffering, in our wounds, is the opportunity to contemplate and receive the wisdom teachings of our particular and personal life. So for me, I think it will always come back to that. How are we using wisdom in our own lives, and how do we move with that and understand the difference between trying to fix something, trying to acquire more information about something versus truly being in an inner knowing that's connected to something bigger than us, a kind of a goodness and love that is bigger than just the individual experience.
And I think that's so great because it fits right in with my intention and the whole reason that we started this coming from that conversation with my friend Justin, who's in his mid 30s, when he was saying with all the turmoil that's going on, he was saying, I don't think we have a generation gap, I think we have a wisdom gap.
Mm.
So it's my intention in doing this with you to close that gap, to make sure that we are just providing from our point of view, our experiences, important voices, even our own, that we've heard through the years, to share with people who are interested in maybe seeing the solutions that other people have come up with, because that to me is what is so powerful about wisdom. When I think about wisdom, I do think, like my husband Bob said, my Bob Vetter, wisdom reveals universal truth, that which can be applied to the whole of human experience.
I love
and,
that.
and it is, I know, I love that too, and it's opposed to dogma. I was thinking about this in the shower this morning. I came up with this.
Great wisdom comes through in the shower.
In the shower, driving cars and in the shower, doesn't it? I know.
Water wisdom.
And the thing is that as opposed to dogma, which limits universal truths that can be revealed, because wisdom fosters human evolution, dogma stifles it. And wisdom tells us that all dogmatic thinking leads to tyranny.
What do you mean by dogma? Just in case somebody
like when you're talking about, and the definition of dogma is a set of beliefs that you adhere to the exclusion of everything else. Mm-hmm. So lots of things have dogma. You know,
Right.
political parties have dogma, religions have dogma, scientists have dogma. You know, even some spiritual practices have a dogma.
Yes.
We tend to think of it in terms of religion because that's the way the term is most often used.
Hmm.
But any belief system that excludes other ways of thinking and excludes you from listening to other ways of thinking without punishment, or
Okay.
punishes people who are thinking differently than you if you happen to be the dominant dogma carrier.
So
You
then
know,
maybe as we go into these wisdom teachings, and at least I'm going to give it to myself as a goal, I am really going to try to listen because I've already collected quite a pile of beliefs, right, throughout my
right.
58 years, um, to try to meet it with a sense of expansiveness,
Mm,
with, listening in a way that it can surprise us somehow, like we can find something we did not notice before. And this year, this New Year's, I gave myself the goal to approach the year and every day to take a moment of whimsy and discover the wisdom in the whimsical. And what I'm finding about it, I'm still new to it, it's just been a month, but that whimsy is really approaching things with a childlike mind, a kind of curiosity and an allowance to allow us to find the awe, the surprise, the thing that isn't necessarily the right answer, but I'm allowing myself to go. So maybe that could be a way of just approaching everything that we bring to the show.
yes, absolutely. Because I think that when we go back to that childlike curiosity
Mm.
and that child mind, we are much more open to other experiences and we're much more open to other voices. So, and we don't feel so afraid. You know, when we're children, we're kind of fearless. You know, we're kind of fearless because we don't know there's something to be afraid of. But it also seems to me that when we look around now, there's a lot of fear. And fear is what tends to make us look to something that's going to dictate to us how life should be. It makes us feel safe. It gives us security. You know, so that the thing about looking at wisdom from many sources and many ages is that it raises our level of knowingness, our level of consciousness. Because when we listen to things that other people have said and listen to places others have been and lived through,
Mm-hmm.
then we can apply it to ourselves, like you said earlier.
And I do love this idea of beginning to cast out the fear
Mm-hmm.
of not having the answer, of seeming, just not knowledgeable enough, or having to stick to things because we're afraid not to. And for me, and I know for you, Maddi, because we have been working on this together for years and years, a big part of our life's mission is promoting the way of the divine feminine teachings. And
Right.
wisdom is, in fact, a feminine concept. And so, what does that mean to be a feminine concept? It doesn't mean that it belongs to women. It means that it has a kind of inclusiveness and a connection to love and to the birthing and support and healing of humanity. And
Right.
very much mother wisdom. It's that is the feminine, and the path of wisdom is horizontal, right? There's the vertical path, which is much more patriarchal, right? It's a path of achievement, of hierarchy, of dominance. But this feminine path walks with everybody on the same level. We're
Yep.
all here together, and we are part of this human existence upon the earth. And within that, let's really get earthy,
Right.
what we know and can know, and what wisdom lives there. So I'm excited about bringing forward the feminine principles.
I know, and that very feminine principle that you just talked about is something that Ken Wilber talks about in his integral theory, is that we include and transcend, which
Oh,
is very different. It's very different than let's just forget everything that happened in the past. Let's erase it. Because you've got the old saying about, he who forgets history is doomed to repeat it, but it's even more than that. When you're including what's gone on, even the bad stuff, even the harmful stuff, when you're looking at it and examining it and asking yourself, how did I get here as an individual? If you're looking at it for yourself, or if you're looking at it for a culture, how did we end up here? Right? How did we end up in this place?
right.
And whatever it
Really.
is,
Mhm.
if you include that and you have that examination, then you transcend that place. And that's how all human evolution happens. But we also have descending. Very often we include and transcend, and then we go, whoa, too scared to be up here. Let's come back down here. We know this is better. Let's go down here. So we do this thing of kind of going up and down and repeating cycles of violence, revolution, and peace. And
Mhm.
ultimately, in all of these great wisdom teachings, it gives us an anchor so that we can look at these teachings and say, oh, yes, 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 I remember. This is how we have to act if we're really going to truly bring about world peace, if I'm going to have inner peace, if we're going to have an equitable culture, an equitable society, justice for all, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If we're going to bring about all of those things, you can't just put on your blinders and stick your fingers in your ears, blah, 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 not listening, like a 2-year-old. You've got to include and transcend. I love that. I just love that terminology
It
from
really is beautiful. And also that descent is part of the process too.
right,
So that just has me thinking that in a way, if we have within us this wisdom that's waiting to emerge, it's part of our human gift. We also, as human beings, are susceptible to forget the
right,
great knowings and the great teachings, and the wisdom, the need for wisdom teaching and education becomes really important. It's
right,
the reminder, it's the wake up, and maybe that is also a piece of it, is as we listen to and incorporate these teachings, to allow it to wake up a certain knowingness within us that says, oh, yes, I remember that. Now, how do I hold that? How do I bring it forward?
right.
Because I do think we're prone to forget. We
Yes.
really make the same mistakes over and over again.
I know. Well, it's like the first time I heard Tom Porter, the Mohawk spiritual leader, for those of you who don't know, which is probably most of the people listening. The Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse, or who we call the Iroquois or Iroquois Confederacy, have a very long ceremony. We might call it a prayer that in our language is called the Thanksgiving Address. And in this prayer ceremony, it starts with giving thanks to the people. And
Mm.
as he said, the very first time I heard him explain it, it's because we the people, are the only ones that forget. Nature doesn't forget. Like you said, a deer doesn't forget how to be a deer, and it starts acting like a chipmunk. so that's right on the money. We are the only ones that forget, and we only have each other to remind us.
Yes.
And this wisdom gap that Justin talked about is partly an age thing, partly getting our generations, our older generations and younger generations, to connect with each other again. It's partly, like you just said, education, because sadly, because of the internet, because of the way education changed, because of many things, Younger people were not educated the way we were. They weren't reading the books the way we are. They weren't sitting in school and having discussions about great ideas because everything sped up so much.
It did speed up. So where do you think is a place to start, right? So if we're exploring this body of wisdom teachings, um, what would be a teaching that you feel like, okay, this one has to come forward? Or
Well,
what would be a good place to start?
I always think a great place to start is Plato's allegory of the cave.
That's the classic, yes.
Yep, it is the classic, and not just because it was Plato, who's a philosopher. That has nothing to do with it. It's a slice of genius, divinely inspired or not, however you want to look at it. And since Plato talked about the allegory of the cave, it has been repeated over and over and over and over a couple of thousand years, right?
Because so it says there's some resonating truth to that.
Right. So just very briefly, for people that haven't heard about it, there's this group of people who are chained up together inside a cave, right? And all they can see are these shadows moving across the walls, and that becomes their whole life. Their whole life are looking at these shadows. It's so dark, they can't really even see each other. They're chained where they are, and generation after generation, this has been the life of these people in the cave. Then one day, one of the guards comes in, unchains a prisoner, takes him up the stairs, and takes him outside. And at first, his eyes are burning. He's never been outside in the sun. His eyes are all burning, and he doesn't, he can't even see. Eventually, his eyes adjust, and he looks, and he sees this amazingly beautiful world out there, the things that he couldn't even ever imagine, because he's been sitting in the cave for his entire life. And of course, cruelly, the guards come back, they take him back downstairs, they chain him back into his place, and then he tells everybody what he's seen. And at first, everybody's just laughing at him, right? And then he keeps insisting, no, you've got to believe me. This is what I saw. Life isn't like this. There's a whole big giant world out there. Here's what it looks like. But the more he insists that this is real, the more people get angry at him. And if they could get rid of their chains, they would kill him. They don't want to hear this. They don't want to hear this truth. And I think, that allegory is the allegory for the way that we as human beings go backwards and forwards, the way we ascend and descend. Because
go ahead. What would be your kind of bottom line of it now, like in retelling it now? Because right, I remember learning it in college, right, in a philosophy course. So what piece resonates most strongly with you?
The piece that resonates most strongly with me is that people can't hear the truth unless it's not threatening to them.
Okay.
So to me, it's all about, ultimately, that isn't exactly in the story. Exactly. The story would be people can't hear the truth if it threatens them, and they'll kill the person delivering it. It's like the kill the messenger thing. But when you think about it beyond that, it means you, as the person who is presenting your truth or your perspective on a truth, have to find a way to talk about it in a way that isn't going to threaten the very people you want listening to you. Otherwise, they're just going to turn around and walk away, or worse yet, they're going to kill you. They're going to hurt you. They're going to do something to shut you up.
Okay. So, and that is interesting, because as I was listening to you, something occurred to me that otherwise wouldn't have. And that was the idea of the cave, right? And the cave also being a place where great and important work is done for us as human beings. And I think the problem in the allegory is that the one who went out and saw this light and was bringing it back to the prisoners really had a judgment that what was outside the cave was in fact better than what was inside the cave.
Mm-hmm.
And that level of the truth that I have is this right truth, and your way is wrong. So, and the other part is this adjusting to the light, right? So when you're inside the dark cave, your eyes adjust to seeing in the dark.
Right.
When you go out into the light, your eyes at first can't really see everything because your eyes are adjusting to the light. And then when he goes back into the cave again, his eyes have to adjust to seeing in the dark. So this holding of the two spaces of what we see in the darkest spaces, the shadow spaces of existence, and what we see in the light places, we have to train our eyes to see in both places
Right.
and understand both places. Then we won't be killing each other.
Right.
Because maybe there's like, I have come, and it only has come to me through spiritual practice. I have come to appreciate the cave, the place of
Wow.
retreating into the Temescal, into complete blackness, of sweating it out, of meeting the shadow, of finding community in those darkest places.
Right.
And the idea of being a prisoner there, like, why did he have to pick a cave? Like, be in a prison. The cave to me
Right.
is so feminine. It's the earth. It's the greatest teacher. It's the womb. It's the Temescal. Like, why did you pick
Right.
why did you pick a cave? I don't know why you picked a cave to be the imprisonment. But and then do you the susceptibility of us to, as human beings, to be manipulated and believe that those shadows on the wall are something real and the only truth is part of the problem. But that brings me to this, was your saying that ultimately it is about finding a way to have the conversation. How could that conversation had gone differently, right? He's out in the light to come back in and be able to have the conversation in a way where both the worlds, because they both exist in human existence, are personal bondage and are a complete liberation. How do we have that conversation?
Right.
And that is where I agree with you, Maddi. We need healing.
Right.
We need complete healing on this point.
And I mean, it even actually alludes to that old saying from the Tao or from Zen. I don't remember which one, but that old saying that those who speak don't know, and those who know don't speak.
Mm.
So, I mean, maybe there's even room in there. Yeah, you got back into the cave. You know what the bigness is out there. You know what's going on, but you don't have to speak about it. Like part of the having to tell what you know, might just come from your own ego sometimes.
Yes.
I need to show you how much smarter I am than you are,
And
So I think that's where that old saying comes from, that, those who speak don't know, and those who know don't speak. But of course, what we're getting to is, how do we speak to each other? And that's what we're trying to model here, having that conversation without putting somebody down, without making them feel less than or afraid.
Now, and the way that I imagine, right, an indigenous person coming in, he would come in and tell a story
Right. Oh, you're so right.
this light that was blinding, and allow the imagination to go to this other world, that was outside the possibility, because our ultimate freedom as human being is we're dreamers. We can dream into existence um, the realities that we want to see. So there, to me, is the brilliance of indigenous wisdom, which is
Right.
you don't want it to be threatening. Like, tell it as a story. And
Exactly.
and I really feel like you just want to know more, and you're beginning to put down those boundaries of, you know, suddenly you're negating my whole world. You're saying
Right.
that the way I'm existing is less than,
Exactly.
and that is threatening.
It is threatening. And I think that's one of the things we'll delve into as we go further into the show is the difference between Western culture and worldview and indigenous culture and worldview, especially here in North America. And and that is a very, very important topic to talk about as we continue forward in seeking how to include everybody's wisdom. You know, most of us tend to only look at the wisdom from our particular culture, our particular world. And I think that understanding that wisdom has this connection to universal truth that we talked about earlier, that understanding means that it's coming from everywhere. You just have to listen, you
Yeah.
know. Exactly. So what we want to do, we're taking questions. So we want to go on to our question of the week, which was from our friend Amalia, who designed our beautiful and gorgeous logo, our very, very talented Amalia Drews. And do you have her question there with you? Or I
So
think,
I do. I do. On As we're moving towards wisdom, are there things that we need to unlearn?
that's right.
So is and it very much ties into what we're talking about today, right? With certain
Right.
belief systems that we haven't actually even been aware of to question, right? There's a certain blindness. And what do you think, Maddie? Do you think
Well,
there are things we need to unlearn?
no, I think that falls into the category of include and transcend. You
Yes.
know, I think that there are things that we need to examine more closely. And and I think we have to start with ourselves. I think one of the dangers that human beings always get into is that you're to blame. You're the one doing it wrong. You know, the old saying about you point the finger at somebody else, there's three pointing back at you. You know, don't get into that. If we're good, it's not so much an unlearning of things as it is an understanding of things. And then from there, I think we transcend, we go beyond, and we evolve.
I do love the word, and it has been popping up a lot, the unlearn word,
Yes.
because it is a very active process. So
Yep.
to unlearn something, it really is what you were just saying. You have to actively kind of go in and begin to dissect and to look again,
Right.
and rediscover what is truth and what isn't truth. So it being used that way, I love it. You know, whatever it is, unlearn everything and start again.
Right.
But let's not forget, I also think that's really important, is it's not wiping out. And we've certainly seen the destruction that happens by just sort of erasing parts of our history and knowledge, and not really integrating the difficult pieces that we need to learn about what humans are capable of, because humans
Right.
are really capable of doing really unkind things. So
Yes.
yes, so that's a great question. I love that.
I know. And just, I really noticed this with my recovery from my autoimmune, this process over 13 months, is that you have to unlearn pain in a way that
Okay.
I don't know that I would call it unlearning. I would call it more like understanding. And but there is an element of transmuting it, you
Okay.
know, so that what happens with your, you know, your mind is so powerful. And when you're in pain, your mind controls your body, and it makes you do things that you don't want to do. It'll hunch you over, it'll close you in, it'll stop you from walking. If walking hurts, it will. And then as you heal, you actually have to reverse the process. You have to get your mind to go, okay, you're not in pain. Put your shoulders back, stand up straight, and walk. And that process happens within your mind, your body, your spirit, your emotions. It is a holistic process, because when you're in physical pain, it overrides everything. And you go into that fight or flight mode, and you protect yourself.
Yes.
So there is an element of, as Amalia called it, unlearning that has to happen. But it's, in a sense, you're also including the fact that this is how I reacted to the pain. So now I can undo what the pain caused me to do, so that I can live in a space of being well and healthy.
And so that really becomes motivated by a breakdown in a system. So looking at something that's not working in your life, in your body, in your mind, and then perhaps like going to that wisdom of, oh, it's possible for us to unlearn the way that we are used to looking at this, right?
Right.
So it is part of the unpacking of what is broken down. And as you unlearn it, you get then the chance to begin again and relearn and integrate in a way that makes more sense for the holistic healing. And it goes back to what we started with in this half hour, which is the wisdom for the purpose of healing, right? For coming into wholeness and moving away from this fragmented body of knowledge. So that's,
and what you do, what I discovered is, what you don't want to do is condemn the pain. Like, in a weird, the more you condemn it, the more you no matter who's causing the pain, the more anger you put into it, the more condemnation in the case of another person, the more belittling, the more demeaning you become, the worse the pain is. So I learned this practice from our friend, now I'm gonna blow his name, but Juan Louis Stevens, who is Jose Louis Stevens. Sorry.
Jose.
who is a shaman training for many years, wrote a great book called Praying with Power, has a new one coming out. I'll let you all know about that. But what he talks about is sending love. Like, if you're in physical pain, you actually talk about, I love my shoulders, I love my knees, I love my neck. And, you send love to these areas, and not even asking what's the lesson. You don't even have to go there. But if you just get in that state of loving even what is causing you pain, the pain actually, I got to tell you the truth, physically diminishes. It really does. And it's weirdly, people would say it's miraculous, but it's very weird how the more you do it, the more, when you think to yourself, or at least for me, when I would think to myself, I love my shoulder, if it's really bothering me, like, the pain would go away. So it's really this process of, like what you're talking about, accepting the pain, but transmuting it. Because
and again, so I think that goes back to our prisoners in the cave, right?
Right.
there they are. It, you know, you're a prisoner of, you can be a prisoner of your pain
Right.
and hate it and, you know, just fight against it. Or you can somehow create room to love your pain. Wow.
Right.
And see it transcend or transmute or begin this process of shift and growth, right? So it
Right.
starts to evolve, it starts to change. Very interesting. So maybe as we look at wisdom coming into the week, right, as we close out on our half hour,
Right. Or
maybe,
slightly over half hour, but stick with us. We're almost there.
yeah, so maybe we can look at it in the most practical ways of at this allegory, at this metaphor of where in our lives we are, you know, imprisoned in a certain darkness, and how we can in fact bring light to that place without judging it,
Mm,
without really bringing a judgment to it, but a sense of uh, value and inner knowing that it holds this possibility for what you were talking about, transcendence. So where am I in the cave? Where am I in the light? Where do my eyes need to adjust so I can see a little bit more deeply? And I will go back to, I love caves. I'm embracing the cave, and it's winter, and I may just hibernate in there for the week, but I definitely love it.
so everybody out
Maddi,
there, that is your assignment. Should you choose to accept it,
yes,
explore the cave, explore the light this week,
yes,
and get back to us next week. We will be back next week live on Facebook and Strong Island Radio and on YouTube, live at 2 p.m. every Sunday. And then you can hear us on every other platform. After that, we'll be uploaded to iTunes, iHeartRadio, iEverybody. So please listen. Please send us your questions. If you need a place to send questions, you can send them to Maddi, Maddi, at Women's Oneness, WOMENSONENESS.com, all one word, Maddi at womensoneness.com. And just, we'll answer your questions when we get to our next show.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Love you. Thank you, everybody, for
Bye, Maddi.
listening and being with us. Love you. Thank you to our wonderful producer, Bobby Lacera, and the great Strong Island Radio that he's created. So we'll see you all next week. Thanks so much.